The night the table cracked under her back was the night everything changed, because pain has a way of echoing louder than laughter when the world finally decides to listen, and as the restaurant's warm lights trembled over polished wood and clinking glasses, Emily Carter learned how quickly dignity can be stolen when cruelty wears expensive clothes and confidence. And before the story carries you deeper into this moment, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for the voiceless, take a second right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel for more real stories that matter, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from, because this story is about more than one waitress in one restaurant. It is about what happens when humanity is pushed too far and finally pushes back. And Emily was not supposed to be anyone special that night. She was just another server pulling a double shift at a downtown steakhouse. Feet aching inside worn shoes, hair tied back with practiced neatness, smile trained to stay polite no matter what walked through the door, a skill she learned early growing up with a mother who worked 2 jobs and still came home tired and kind, a mother who taught her that service did not mean submission, though the world often tried to confuse the two, and the couple that entered the restaurant that evening carried themselves like royalty. Jonathan and Vanessa Harrington, names whispered with admiration in certain circles, money stitched into every seam of their tailored clothes, entitlement resting easily on their shoulders, and from the moment Emily greeted their table, something felt wrong, not loud at first, not obvious, just a sharpness behind their smiles, the kind that looks for weakness the way sharks smell blood. And as the evening unfolded, their demands grew heavier, changing orders, criticizing portions, snapping fingers, making her feel smaller with every trip back to the table, and Emily swallowed it all because rent was due and her younger brother's college application fees sat unpaid on her kitchen counter, because sometimes survival asks you to endure what your heart screams to escape, and then it escalated, a spilled glass, an exaggerated accusation, voices rising enough to draw glances from nearby diners, and Emily tried to fix it, apologizing again and again even though her hands were shaking, and when she leaned forward to wipe the table, Vanessa stood abruptly, shoving Emily backward with sudden force, and the impact sent Emily crashing against the edge of the heavy oak table, breath knocked from her lungs, pain exploding across her back, silverware clattering like startled birds, and for a heartbeat the restaurant froze, fear hanging thick in the air, because violence has a way of silencing rooms, and Jonathan's laughter cut through that silence, a low, careless sound that said consequences did not apply to people like them, and Emily lay there stunned, staring up at the ceiling lights blurring through tears she refused to let fall, because crying felt like giving them what they wanted, and the manager hesitated, trapped between morality and money, calculating the cost of doing the right thing, while other patrons looked away, pretending not to see, because comfort often depends on denial, and Emily slowly pushed herself up, dignity bruised but not broken, whispering apologies she should never have had to give, and that was when the door opened with a weight that shifted the room, not slammed, not dramatic, just heavy with presence, and the man who walked in did not wear a suit or carry arrogance, he carried quiet authority, leather jacket worn by years and miles, boots scarred by roads most people never traveled, eyes steady and observant. His name was Marcus Hale, and though many in the city knew him as a biker gang leader, those who truly knew him understood something deeper, that loyalty and justice mattered more to him than fear, and he paused just inside the doorway, taking in the scene with a glance that missed nothing, the waitress holding her back, the overturned chair, the tension vibrating through the room, and he moved slowly, deliberately, toward the counter, each step measured, not threatening, just undeniable, and something about that calm made the Harringtons uneasy, because power recognizes power even when it does not understand it, and Marcus took a seat near the bar, ordering coffee in a voice that carried like gravel and patience, giving the room time to breathe again, but his eyes never left Emily, and Emily felt it, that gaze not as judgment but as acknowledgement, as if someone had finally seen her not as a servant but as a human being who had been wronged, and while the Harringtons resumed their smug posture, whispering and laughing, Marcus waited, because some battles are not won by rushing in but by letting truth reveal itself, and when Emily walked past his table, her step stiff, he nodded slightly, a small gesture that grounded her more than any apology could, and she continued working because what else could she do, and moments later the Harringtons stood to leave, dropping cash on the table like a weapon, not to pay but to remind everyone of their supposed superiority, and that was when Marcus stood as well, his chair scraping softly against the floor, drawing every eye. And he approached the manager first, speaking calmly, asking if the waitress was okay, asking if the incident had been reported, asking questions that forced accountability into the open, and the manager stammered, trapped now between two kinds of power, one loud and wealthy, the other quiet and unmovable, and Marcus then turned his attention to the Harringtons, not with threats or raised voice, but with something far more unsettling, unwavering calm, and he stated facts, that what they did was assault, that witnesses were present, that silence did not erase harm, and the couple scoffed at first, dismissing him as just another biker, but the room had shifted, diners who had looked away before now watched closely, phones subtly recording, courage spreading like a slow flame, and Emily stood behind the counter, heart pounding, watching as strangers began to care, and the police arrived not because Marcus demanded it but because truth has a way of calling for backup when it is finally allowed to speak, and statements were taken, witnesses came forward, and for the first time that night, Emily felt protected, not by wealth or status but by community, and as the Harringtons were escorted out, their confidence fractured, Emily's knees nearly gave out, the adrenaline fading into exhaustion, and Marcus approached her once more, offering quiet reassurance, telling her without words that she mattered, and in the days that followed, the story spread, not as gossip but as a reminder. The restaurant reviewed its policies, the manager apologized publicly, the Harringtons faced charges that money could not entirely erase, and Emily took time off to heal, her back bruised but her spirit strangely lighter, because sometimes pain opens doors you never knew existed, and Marcus did not disappear back into the shadows as people expected. He checked in, connected Emily with a legal advocate, helped her find resources, not because he sought praise but because doing the right thing was simply part of who he was, and Emily began to see herself differently, not as someone who had to endure anything to survive, but as someone worthy of respect, and when she returned to work, she stood taller, her smile no longer forced, and customers noticed, kindness meeting kindness in small but powerful ways, and if this story is starting to move you, if you feel that tightening in your chest that comes when justice finally breathes, remember that engagement helps stories like this reach others who need them, so please like the video, share it, and stay part of this community, because your support keeps these moments alive. And months later, Emily enrolled in night classes, inspired to pursue advocacy for workers like herself. Her brother got into college with a scholarship, and Marcus continued writing, his reputation quietly reshaped by actions rather than rumors. And on one ordinary evening, Emily visited a different restaurant as a guest, laughing freely, aware now that the world could be cruel but it could also be fiercely kind when someone chose to stand up. And just before this story ends, take a moment to comment below and tell us what this moment meant to you, because your words matter more than you know. And as the screen fades on this chapter of Emily's life, the truth lingers that courage does not always roar. Sometimes it walks in calmly, orders a coffee, and reminds a broken room how to be human again. And if this story touched your heart, please engage with the video one last time, because every like, share, and comment is a promise that kindness will keep finding its way back into the world.